Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Maths Made Easy with Terry in 10 minutes. So we're going to rule 6b, we're still under trigonometry. So in rule 6, and we're looking at how do we integrate trigonometric functions. But we're going to focus now in this video on sine, okay? In the previous video, we talked about cosine. Now in this video, we're going to talk about sine, all right? Before I proceed, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you've not clicked the notification bell, I don't know what you're waiting for. Please do so that when I upload the next video, which is going to be on sec squared, you'll be the first person to know. All right, so similarly, like I said, it's still the same 5 steps on how we integrate sine. It's going to be the same way you're going to integrate cosine. It's going to be the same way you're going to integrate sec squared. So I'm going to repeat the same 5 steps here as well, so that for those that this is your first time seeing this video, you'll also catch up with what we've talked about. So similarly, I always say there's an interesting relationship between sine and cosine, as well as tan and sec squared. Okay, so there's an interesting relationship between both of them. So let's go. So we have, I'm going to write it down because I'm aware some of you do take note. Okay, so there is an interesting relationship. There is an interesting relationship between sine and cosine. Okay, so there's a interesting relationship between sine and cosine and tan and sec squared. Okay, there's a very interesting relationship between tan and cosine and sine and sec squared. So like I said in the previous video, so you write it as sine, cosine, minus sine, minus cosine, all right? So when you differentiate sine, will give you cosine. When differentiate cosine to give you minus sine. When differentiate minus sine is going to give you minus cosine. And when differentiate minus cosine is going to give you sine. All right. So this is under differentiation. In the previous video, I've talked about this already. So that is how you do it. So differentiation, you go right or like you go clockwise. Now, but integration now is exactly the same thing, but in this case, you're going to be going anti-clockwise. So that means you still have the same thing, sine. You still have the same thing. You still have sine, you have cosine, minus sine, minus cosine. But in this case, when you integrate cosine, it's going to give you sine. When you integrate cosine, it's going to give you minus cosine. When you integrate minus cosine, it's going to give you minus sine. And when you integrate minus sine, it's going to give you what? Cosine. Are you seeing it? So this is for integration. This is how you integrate. So this is the relationship between sine and cosine. Now as well, I told you for sec squared and tan, okay? And tan, so when you differentiate, okay? When you differentiate tan, so this is for differentiate. So when you differentiate tan, it's gonna give you sec squared. But when you integrate sec squared, it's gonna give you tan. So this is for integration. Okay, this is for integration. So when you integrate sec squared, it will give you tan. So this is the relationship between them. For differentiation, we've talked about this in the previous video series, so please go back and have a look at it. So, but for this video, we're going to look at how do we integrate from sine to minus cosine, all right? In the previous video, I've talked about cosine to sine, but now we're going to talk about from sine to minus cosine, all right? So when you integrate sine, what will it give you? All right, so let's go. I'm going to write the 5 steps again, just for clarity and so that everybody will be on the same page. So the 5 steps, like I said, is still the exact same 5 steps for sine, cosine, and sec squared. So the 5 steps here, when you're integrating sine, it's exactly the same thing you do. So I'm going to write it here. So the 5 steps. Number 1, So the first thing is that you convert the trigonometry sign to the appropriate integral form. So you convert the trigonometry sign to the appropriate integral form. Number two, you now add the variable from the question, okay? Or from the question to that of step one. So basically, you here what you're trying to say, we're going to substitute the original trig function with the integrated trig function, okay? So now you're going to add the variable from the question to step one to give an integrated trigonometry function. And the variable in brackets. Then after that, number three, you now differentiate the variable in brackets. Then number four, you now divide step two by step three. Okay, so you divide step two by step three result. And number five, you add C, and you only do this in indefinite. So if you're doing an indefinite integration. Okay, if you're doing an indefinite integration. All right. So let's solve some example quickly to explain what I just said. So the first thing, let's assume you're told to integrate sine 8x in respect to dx, okay? In respect to x. All right. So now step one. What does step one? Step one said you have to convert the trig sign to the appropriate integral form, okay? So let's go, the trig sign. The trig sign we have is sine. So remember it's sine, cosine, minus cosine. So when you integrate sine, it's going to give us what? Minus cosine. So that means step one, the sine we had here is going to be equal to what? Minus what? Cosine. Now step two, step two now said we have to add a variable from the question to step one to give an integrated trig function and the variable in brackets. So basically, what are we going to do? This minus cosine, we're going to write it here. And the variable we had here is 8x. You bring it back here. Are you seeing it? Now, step three, what are we going to do? In step three, we'll have to differentiate the variable in the bracket. So what's the variable we have in the bracket here? 8x. So when you differentiate 8x, what will it give you? When you differentiate 8x, it will give you 8. Now, step four, you have to divide step 2 by step 3 result. Step 2, what we had from step 2 was minus cos 8x, all right, divided by step 3 was 8, and step 5, you add c to it, okay? So step 5, you have to add c. So you have to add plus what? C, and that's the answer for that. Okay, so but when you're really very comfortable different integrating, you don't need to go through the step from the beginning. You can just go straight to the answer. But because I'm teaching a larger audience, and I just want to show you my thinking pattern and what I'm doing in my mind so that you can see it and follow the steps as well. All right, so that'll be the answer for that. So the answer for when you integrate that should be minus cos 8x divided by 8 plus c. All right, let's pick another example. Let's assume you're told to integrate, let's say something more interesting. Let's say 1 over 2 sine 6x plus 3 in respect to what? Dx, okay? So 1 over 2 sine 6x plus 3 in respect to dx. So like I always say, when you have a constant, you bring out a constant before you start to what? Integrate. So we have sine 6x plus 3 in respect to dx. So the first step, we have to now, step 1, the trig function we have here is what? Sine. So we have to, when you integrate sine, what will it give you? So remember, it's sine, cosine, minus cosine. Sorry. So it's minus sine minus what? Cosine. So when you integrate sine, it's going to give us minus cosine, all right? So that means for this, we're going to have minus cosine. Now, step 2 is that we have to now replace minus cosine in the question. So it's going to become 1 over 2. So instead of us having sine, we're going to have minus cosine 6x plus 6, right? So we've replaced the trig function there. Now, step 3, we then have to differentiate the variable in the bracket. And the variable we have in the bracket here is 6x plus 6. So 6x plus 6. So when you differentiate 6x, it will give us 6. When you differentiate this 6, it's going to give us 0. So that means when you differentiate 6x plus 6, it's going to give us 6. Now, step 4, we have to now divide step 2 by step 3. So it's going to be 1 over 2 into bracket minus cos 6x plus 6, all divided by what? 6. And now you can easily write this again, okay, to be 1 over 2 times minus cos 6x plus, sorry, this is 3, not 6. I don't know, this is 3. In the bracket here is 3, and the bracket here is 3, okay? So that'll be 3, and that'll be 3, okay? So it will be 6x plus 3 divided by 6. Then 2 times 6 is going to give us 12. So that will now give us minus cos 6x plus 3 divided by 12. And step 5, what do? We add c to this. So it's going to be plus c because it's an indefinite what? Integration for that. Let me pick, let's solve some more example. Let's solve like 2 more so that to just solidify what we've just said already. So let's say we have this question. We are meant to integrate 5 sine 8x, okay, in respect to dx. So 5 sine 8x in respect to dx. Now, as I always say, you have to bring out the constant. So it's going to become sine 8x in respect to dx. All right. So the first thing first, step 1, you have to convert the sine to the integrated form. So remember, it's sine, cosine, minus cosine. All right. And when you integrate sine, it's going to give you minus cosine. So sine is going to give us what? Minus what? Cosine. Step 2, we then have to replace the minus cosine with the trig function from the question. So it's going to be 5 into bracket minus cosine 8x. Okay. Step 3, the next thing we have to do is that we have to then differentiate what is in the bracket. So we have 8x. So when you differentiate 8x, is going to give us what? 8. Step 4, we then have to now divide step 2 by step 3. So it's going to be 5 into bracket minus cos 8x divided by what? 8. Then step 5, you then add what? You then add c to this plus c. All right? And that will be it. Or you can write it again if you want to write it in a different, in a more simplified form. You can write it as minus 5 cos. Write this space a bit. So it's going to be minus 5 cos 8x divided by 8 plus c. So if you want to write it maybe to be more fancy, you can write it like that, but you can also leave your answer like this. It's exactly the same thing. Let me pick one more example. Let me make it a little bit more interesting. What about if you were told to integrate minus sine 3x in respect to dx, okay? Minus sine 3x in respect to dx. So step 1, all right, the first thing you have to do is that we have to integrate minus sine. So if you look at it, we have sine, cosine, minus sine, minus what? Cosine, all right? So we have sine, cosine, minus cosine. So when you integrate, minus sine is going to give you what? Cosine. So that means it's going to give us what? Cosine. So that means step 2, we then have to replace it. So it's going to, instead of having minus sine, it's going to be cosine 3x. Okay. Now, the next thing, step 3, what we then have to do is that we have to now differentiate the variable in the bracket. So it's going to give us 3x. And when you differentiate 3x, it's going to give us what? 3. Now, after differentiating 3, the next thing we have to do step 4. Step 4 is step 2 divided by step 3. So it's going to give us cos 3x divided by what? 3. And step 5, which is the final step, is that you add what? C, because this is a classical indefinite what? Integration. All right. Okay, so let me give you some examples to try. You can try this on your own time. You can now you can put your answer in the comment section so that other subscribers can also give a like or thumbs up if it's correct. Or you can also have a discussion with your friends and see if you have the same thing. All right, so let's give you some examples to try. So I want you to try this. All right. So number 1, I want you to integrate sine 2/3 x in respect to dx. Number 2, I want you to integrate minus 6 sine, let's say 5x in respect to dx. Number 3, I want you to integrate minus sine minus 3/2x in respect to dx. And number 4, I want you to integrate minus sine minus 5x plus 3 in respect to dx. Okay, so I want you to solve this. You can put your answers in the comment section and let's see what you get. All right, and that is that for that. So the next video, I'm going to go straight to how do you integrate sec squares. Okay, so sec squared. So remember in the beginning, I told you there's a relationship as well between sec squared and tan x. Okay, so we're done. I'm done with both cosine and sine now. So you can go to the worksheet, you can go to the textbook, pick several questions about it. So the relationship for that. But now I'm going to go straight into sec squared and tan. So it's important that you subscribe and click the notification bell so that when I upload the next video on how to integrate sec squared and tan, you'll be the first person to know. All right, so see you soon. And like I said, it's going to be the same 5 steps as well for sec squared and tan, similarly to what we've done in both sine and cosine. All right, so see you soon. And we're going to talk about how do we integrate sec squared. So see you soon.